Did you know there's a clotting factor problem or a clotting difficulty that can kill you? 3 million in the U.S. have it. At least that's what we think, because we don't really know how many people have it. We often don't know until they have a pulmonary embolus or a clot and die. We'll talk about how to diagnose it, whether to be concerned about whether you have it or not, in just a minute. And there's one other fact I'll leave out there for suspense while I do a brief introduction. It's named after a city in the Netherlands. So, hello, this is Ford Brewer with PrevMed, heart attack, stroke, disability prevention. We help you live a lot longer, as in decades. But that's not the important part. The important part is you can live healthier. And I'm talking about factor V Leiden today. Factor V Leiden is a genetic problem. It's autosomal, I believe autosomal dominant with incomplete penetration. I'm not going to describe what all that means. Here's the thing. You can have it, and you can even have the genes for it and still not have a demonstration of the problem, still not have the clotting problem. What is it? It's excessive clotting, usually in venous clotting. So, arterial clotting is heart attack and stroke. So maybe not a heart attack and stroke, but what can happen with venous clotting? Pulmonary, pulmonary embolus. So pulmonary embolus can kill you just as dead as heart attack and stroke, and it can also doesn't cause quite the disability that you see with the other two. Now, we'll talk for a minute about this number. There's an estimate that up to 5% of people that have come in with a diagnosis or develop a diagnosis of a clot may have factor V Leiden. So it's the most common hereditary clotting disorder among ethnic Europeans. So that's one clue. Again, more likely to occur among ethnic Europeans, and you begin to start thinking the doc needs to have what we call an index of suspicion. If you come in less than age 45 and you have a venous clotting problem. It was named after the Dutch city Leiden, where it was first discovered and described. Now, how does factor V Leiden work? We're not going to get too detailed about this, but this is the clotting cascade. There's an extrinsic, in other words, trauma. You have a cut, or intrinsic, where you need to form a clot for just routine purposes when you have some breakdown of body tissue. We're not going to go through those details. What we're going to say, though, is that there are several different genetic reasons for clotting. We're not going to go through all those different ones, but we will say factor V Leiden has an impact with 10A. And 10A then has an impact on prothrombin, which again has an impact on fibrinogen or fibrin. And as you saw, that took a little bit of time, and we still really did not go over that. We just blitzed through it. Here's the bottom line. Biochemically, it creates this stuff. By the way, that complicated clotting, we'll call it a clotting cascade. It is complicated because it needs to have both what we call a negative feedback loop and a positive feedback loop. In other words, your body needs to know when to increase the clotting mechanism and then when to back off and decrease it. At the end of the day, you get this. It's fibrin, and it forms what we call a polymer. In other words, a whole bunch of individual fibrin molecules hooked together that form a net that it's like a large net that encapsulates These are red cells. It encapsulates white cells and encapsulates basically whatever is in the blood. That then goes on to form a complete clot and then maybe scar tissue. So here's the problem. You've got too much of this net, or that net, that fibrin net, that clot is too quickly to form, or forms too quickly. Pardon my stumbling over my terms here. Why have I got a picture of this, and what is that? That's oral contraceptives. So now we're beginning to think about, oh, okay, so if we've got an increased propensity to clot, even if it's in the veins, there are things that we need to be thinking about. Oral contraceptives increase your venous clotting. You've heard of women having problems with venous clots with oral contraceptives, and yes, with pregnancy as well. This t-shirt gives a very important message about factor V Leiden. If I can get the image of the t-shirt up here. Here, I'll just hold it this way. I have factor V Leiden. Thousands just like me have it, but don't even know it. I would say that's way low. There's a lot more than thousands have it, but a lot of people don't know it. That's part of the public health message here, something to be aware of. Some will die from it because of clotting. I know I've got it. Not me. I mean, that's what the message is. If you know you've got it, then you can do some things to protect for it. Now, here's part of the problem with all that message, though. Then that sounds like the next statement is everybody go out and get tested for factor V Leiden. I don't think that's the right public health countermeasure at this point. The question is, how do you diagnose it? You do want to have what we call an index of suspicion. If anybody develops clotting, like a deep venous clot, especially below age 45, you need to have an index of suspicion. Your doctor needs to do some testing. Those clots can, again, be a deep venous clot, a superficial clot, and clearly if you have a pulmonary embolus. There is a range, a very broad range. Basically, it could be between 5% and maybe even up to 20% of folks that have pulmonary embolus, again, ethnic European origin, have factor V Leiden. So if somebody has a clotting problem, the next thing you need to do is do a clotting time studies, and then follow that up if you have a positive clotting test, prothrombin time. Then do the genetic test for it. Well, what's the treatment? The treatment is awareness and special considerations for the areas and the things that will cause increased clotting problems, like, and this is going to start to sound familiar, pregnancy, oral contraceptives. If you're going to have surgery, the doc needs to know about it. And obviously it's an issue, since clotting is a big issue for cardiovascular disease and stroke prevention, it's also a big issue for us as well. So again, real quick discussion of the most common genetic clotting problem among ethnic Europeans. And again, a lot of people that have it don't know it. Think about that if somebody you know has a clot.